Remember, in the course of discussing movies, the host will spoil plots. You've been warned. Listen to their screams. Greetings, ghouls and creeps, and welcome to Listen to Their Screams, a horror podcast that feels like you're chatting with friends. I am one of your friends, Dave. We're joined as always by our other friend, Ike. Ike, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm sipping on some Coke Zero from the movie theater. Went to the movies last night. I always fill up my cup and bring it home because I'm gonna get every penny out of that drink. Let me tell you.
Apparently, if you're still drinking it a day later.
That's right. I was put in the fridge the night before, and it stays cold with all that ice.
Interesting. So, I think I know what you went and saw. So, tell us, what'd you go see?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So last night, I went and watched A Haunting in Venice, which is it's based on an Agatha Christie novel about Hercule Poirot.
Yeah, how was it?
So, we'll just jump in here. For people who are potentially curious, there are two other movies kind of in the series. There's a lot of TV stuff as well. But there's it's Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, and then this one, which is A Haunting in Venice. And it was really good, actually. I really like the Hercule Poirot stuff just because I think it's interesting. I like a good whodunit. But this was like a whodunit with a little bit of spookiness with it. So I greatly enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it here in a bit in the news, just a little, because it did well in the box office. So we'll talk about that a little bit. It's funny because it's a tale of two worlds. You're sipping on Coke Zero, and I'm skipping on Scotch. So sorry,
maybe later.
I do love the Coke Zero, but mine's more fun. So
fair.
No, I had a rough day at work and a busy day and a hectic day, and so the Scotch is coming in. Well, I don't know. I say that it's not really any earlier. I'm a Scotch after work kind of guy. So anyway, but
like the 1950s.
Man, if it was, life would be a little simpler. We wouldn't be doing this because we'd be on the radio. But
True.
So be it. And we wouldn't get to talk about our movie today because today we're going to talk about Elevator Game. And the movie didn't exist at that time, nor did the whole concept of internet, folk tales and rumors and urban legends and whatnot, primarily because, well, the internet didn't exist. But that's just the way it is. But before we dive into all that, we have some of our other things to do. And the first thing we have to do is say this is officially our 1-year anniversary episode. This episode will be releasing on September 21st. We're actually then a day short because our first episode released on September 22nd, 2022. So for all intents and purposes, we've made it a year, Ike. And we've not missed a week. We've not been late. We've actually provided one bonus episode in there for Halloween, which we will do every year. Man, it's kind of flown by. It doesn't feel like it's been a year.
It really hasn't. I was actually talking to my wife earlier, Kayla, and we were kind of talking about it, and I started getting what's it called, Facebook memories of when we first started doing some promotional stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of announcing our potential entry into the podcast world, and it's just crazy because we started doing it because I did another YouTube channel which I plan to potentially do some stuff with. It's called Geek Stew, but I feel like we've really thrown a lot of our focus on the horror podcast, and I feel like it's been doing pretty well. So I'm starting to get those memories, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I've seen those as well, and it's funny to look at some of that early stuff because it's like we didn't have anything, right? We didn't have any content. We hadn't really even taken any of our promo pictures or anything yet to use, and we were just scrambling to put stuff together to put out there to kind of hype the upcoming. So it is kind of funny to look back at that and think, man, not only does it not feel like it's a year, really, but in some senses, man, it feels like it's been forever because I feel like as a show, we've grown so much since then. I mean, we really kind of found our formatting and our footing, and evolved some of our segments and what we do, and we're getting lots of screener links from places and DVDs from other places and Blu-rays from other places and lots of things. So while it feel like the year's flown by, I mean, I guess creatively, man, I feel like it's been longer. I feel like we've come a long way.
Right. No, absolutely. A lot of evolution, and I suspect we'll have even more evolution in the coming year.
Yeah, we will. We will. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously lots more to do, lots more things to grow at, I mean, ideally at some point in time, we'd love to start making some convention appearances, right? And having some booths in that, but I don't think we're quite there just yet, but who knows? I mean, that's something I like for us to do down the road. And, I've been thinking, hey, we probably could do with, freshening up the segments a little bit and maybe coming up with a few more. We have the 4 or 5 we rotate, but maybe we need a couple more to throw in that rotation to give us, a little, I don't want anything to, get stale. So maybe
Right.
some other game ideas and things and whatnot. So, I mean, you can't ever stay stagnant. You have to keep growing. I feel like we do a lot of things good. I think our reviews are fun. Everybody loves our franchise episodes, which, we'll continue to do those. Everybody liked our year in review episode we did last year. So of course we'll continue to do those and things. So, we do a lot right, a lot that I enjoy, but there's obviously room to continue to grow and create and whatever. That's the cool thing. Once you do it for a while, at least for me, when I do something creatively, once I get rolling with it, that's the ideas really start flowing, and more ideas hit to, oh, we should try this or we should do that. It's when I really get in the process is when those ideas start really hitting me. So,
Absolutely.
but 1 year down and who knows how many to go. We'll never run out of horror movies, so we'll probably never run out of podcasts to do.
That's right.
And not to mention that I mean, horror movies, man, are just top shelf right now. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the public stigma is on them anymore. But when's the public going to just start thinking of horror movies more in line with like superhero movies and action movies? I mean, horror movies they kick ass at the box office every time they're out. They're the most consistent performing. I don't know. I mean, I know creatively people discuss what's the prime years for things, but there's a lot of good shit out now, and but successfully, this might be the prime time. I mean, horror movies, just every horror movie that comes out is topping the weekend of their opening weekend.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like you said, I don't know if there's just still like this weird like stigma to the whole concept of a horror movie. It's always kind of had that, especially since they were kind of considered lesser films for a very long time. But like you said, horror films are just performing so spectacularly. It's hard to believe that people still think that.
Yeah, and it's we're not and I'm not knocking hokey cheesy slasher off because that's my favorite stuff. That is my
Right.
favorite stuff. There is still some of that out there which I still love, but there's a lot of horror now that creatively you can put up against anything and it's just as well done. And you're not getting you're getting mainstream actors that are doing it and stuff. So again, I don't know. I've never been one to pay a lot of attention to what the public as a whole says about things. I kind of stay in my niche, and and that's one thing you find once you become a fan of something, you kind of, I don't know, you gravitate towards other fans, and that's just what you kind of fall into. So you don't really know what the outside is thinking about it. But it's hard to imagine, as successful as they are, that it's there's not a little bit of crossover. I mean, they're not whatever. I feel like us in the that like these genre type films and who have always been in the minority to like these, given the success, I feel like our numbers are kind of crossing over into the majority now.
Yeah.
So it's a good time. It's a good time. And like I said, it's fun to think about all the movies we've seen already this year and to think about all the movies that are still coming out. It's so cool to have these things and to be excited and to know that, there's some big movies, right? We've already seen some big movies, but there's still a lot of really big movies to come out. So it's, I don't know, it's fun to think that, that it's such a, whatever you define your golden era. I mean, you can't knock that this is not a good time to be a horror fan. So
Absolutely.
But before we move on here, special thanks to our wives, as we always say, Monica and Kayla. They'll be back on soon to do a wives rebuttal. We think they might be on when we do the episode where we review Saw X, because Monica has already expressed that she believes you and her will have differing opinions of the Saw franchise as a whole. So, and that will be the episode after our Saw franchise episode. So, she feels like that might be the point. She's going to reach out to Kayla and they're going to discuss. She loves Saw, the first Saw, loves it, thinks it's a masterpiece, but she has some very distinct opinions about the franchise as a whole, and she feels will differ from ours. So, no matter, they'll be on soon. But Ike,
Oh boy.
yeah. That's always good times when that happens. But before you said you went and saw the Haunting in Venice. Did you watch anything else this week?
Yeah, I actually only watched one other thing to mention, but I actually really liked it, and I think some folks out there might like it. I watched it's called Censor on Hulu. It's from 2021. It's sort of it's a very trippy movie. I'll let everybody know that. So if you're not really into like trippy kind of wonky movies, maybe not your movie. But it's about about a girl who is a UK video censor. Basically, she watches all of these movies, and I guess over there they have like a whole department that agrees on like what should be cut from films and things like that.
Yeah.
And so basically, she works for a censor. Well, she's watching a movie and she recognizes one of the actresses, and it looks like someone who looks like her sister. And she's in a movie that very closely mimics the events of her sister's disappearance. So she believes that this is her sister. So that's kind of what the movie's about. It's pretty good. Definitely weird, but good.
Cool. Sounds very cool. I didn't really watch anything per se. Like I said, work's been hectic. Lots going on. Whatever. Process changes that I've had to learn and everything. It's been hectic. It's cut into my time watching and even having things on in the background. I don't believe I've watched anything. Did we speak last week? I'm losing track of time here. Was last week when I said I watched Crabs and all that, or did we discuss those?
I'm trying to remember. I think so, because you said that Crabs is literally about crabs.
Yeah,
right?
It's a little okay. Yeah, so no, so I haven't watched anything since then. So we're good. Besides the movie we're reviewing today.
Of course.
Yeah. And but anyway, so let's get on to that. Let's get on to our segment of the week. Top 3. And this episode, we are hooking around to the OG. We are doing a top 3, which was the old tried and true from when we first started, speaking of our anniversary, which we ran for many, many, many episodes. Then we thought, man, this is going to get stale and tiring, and we're going to run out of ideas if we don't switch it up. So that's when we decided to freshen it up, and that was the right move. It was a good move, and that's why I think we should come up with some other ideas. But anyway, we're back to top 3, and since we're discussing Elevator Game today, we thought we would do top 3 favorite internet urban legends, and this is not movies based on these legends or anything like that. This is just the legends themselves. Now, before we get into this, Ike, I'm going to absolutely flat out 100% say this is in no way even close within the same continent at all of one of my expertise. So my picks are not I don't know. I'm not real knowledgeable even on my picks. But I kind of looked over some lists and some things, and it kind of hit on ones that I've heard of a little bit, and that sounded intriguing to me. But I don't have a lot of insight into any of these. So if there's any more to say about these, you'll have to provide that insight. Because this is not while I don't find this interesting, I do. It's just not something that I've ever really delved into, and not one of those things I've ever gone down the rabbit hole and done a lot of anything viewing or reading or research or anything like that. So I'm just saying this is a very uneducated list, but since it's an opinion, that doesn't really matter. So.
Right.
And since I'm the dope here, I'm going to start. And my number 3, I picked one that is called The Rake. Have you heard of this one?
I sure have.
Okay. And I don't know much about this, but I have seen many takes on this creature thing, which I'm assuming is, correct me if I'm wrong, is The Rake what they're referring to the creature as?
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
creature is called the Rake.
Yeah, which is kind of a creature, a human, kind of a humanoidish type creature, but it walks on all fours. Very creepy. Now, there's obviously lots of takes on this, lots of angles to go at. But this is something that I've kind of heard a little about, seen, like I said, seen some variations of. Seemed really, really creepy to me. And the one from what I've read, this is one that's really intriguing because there's lots of quote unquote kind of hard evidence on these things, right? There's video captures of them and things, if I'm right, of spotting these things that really kind of perks your interest and makes you wonder about them. So that's what I picked as my number 3 because it really caught my interest. Ike, what do you know about the Rake? And is that true? Is there some things out there that people are calling some kind of hard evidence for these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me preface it to you like this because the Rake in of itself is sort of like this. Let me preface all of this by saying that the internet has done this kind of fantastic thing with early media, especially in the early days of the internet, where it's very easy to sensationalize and really just push forward like these sort of like creepy urban legends. And one of the biggest sources of all these kind of creepy urban legends and a lot of these undocumented things is creepypasta. So
Right.
creepypasta used to be a forum back in the day that really housed all of these, and a lot of the ones that I have on my list are originally creepypastas. But the Rake is a creepypasta. However, while the Rake is a creepypasta, some of the images of supposed rakes are actual images of unknown creatures that are from like trail cameras. The Rake is very similar to something such as like a Wendigo
Mm-hmm.
or like a Skinwalker, kind of depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
While I don't necessarily believe a lot of like the creepypastas of the Rake, I firmly believe that there's got to be something in the realm of a Skinwalker. I mean, there's a lot of a lot of overlapping legends from different cultures that allude to something of this nature. But yeah, The Rake is a fantastic story. There's actually major motion pictures that were made in the early 2000s and like 2010, I believe, about The Rake. But yeah, The Rake is super creepy. A lot of the images that are produced are so well done that they look real. But it's also based in a pretty creepy reality that there's some pretty creepy shit out there we don't really know about.
Yeah. And a lot of these, I will be forthcoming. A lot of these things, my knowledge is anything they've touched on in Supernatural, the TV
Yeah,
series. And while they haven't per se touched on the Rake specifically, there are skinwalkers. There are things like that. There
yeah,
are plenty of things in this realm in that. So maybe that's why this caught my eye because I could completely see this being something that they would have pursued Supernatural. But it was like I said, the images I saw were super spooky, super creepy. Um, Something that I would love to see in in a movie or whatnot. And it really caught my eye. So that's why I picked it as my number 3. So moving on, Ike, what is your number 3?
absolutely. So my number 3 is actually a relatively new creation kind of urban legend, but it's called the Backrooms. Um, so the Backrooms is sort of like so it kind of started years ago as people would post pictures of spaces that are called liminal spaces. So the concept of a liminal space, which actually we recently reviewed a movie called oh god, what was the one that was in the hotel where like the girl goes crazy and she kills her friends?
I don't know.
Like oh
What
man,
was it?
the one that was on Shutter that we just reviewed. Man, I'm already drawing a blank on this.
We just reviewed recently?
Yeah, like a couple episodes ago that we didn't really care for. We liked the concept, but we didn't really care for it.
Mm,
Like something about so we're all gonna or we're I'm people or she's gonna hurt you or something like that. Um,
you talking about
well,
bad things?
bad things, yeah,
Yeah.
bad things.
Uh-huh.
So the bad things actually, as I was kind of looking into it more, it actually kind of talks a little bit about sort of like liminal spaces. A lot of the hotel scenes and the scenery are of liminal spaces, spaces that feel oddly familiar, even though you've never been there. you feel sort of an odd sense of familiarity to some of those images and imagery because they kind of feel familiar, right? So that's what a liminal space is. And that's kind of what backrooms are, is these are familiar spaces that you feel like you've been to before, but you've never been there. And the concept of a back room is originally like an internet like kind of story where you can basically you can end up in the back rooms just randomly, and then you get chased by like creatures and things like that. And there's actually a movie in the works about the back rooms. But it's kind of an interesting urban legend that's kind of has very innocent beginnings with liminal spaces. But it's very interesting. It's very spooky, and I love how the internet is sort of proliferating this concept of the back rooms, and it's getting a movie. So I think it'll be pretty cool.
Interesting. I found out there's a lot of these things that are being tapped for movies if they've not already been made. This is kind of the new thing. Urban legends have always, right? They've always tapped into these for movies, but now these creepypastas. I mean, we reviewed creepypasta or talked about creepypasta a few episodes ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like I said, I'm not real knowledgeable on these, so that's not one that I was familiar with or that I've heard. I believe I saw that name and I was looking over some lists, but it does sound intriguing. But that brings me to number 2, and this one, my number 2. This is one that this concept as a whole has always fascinated me because this shit happened and happens. I have no doubt. There is no doubt, right? There's documented proof of some of this. My number 2 is the Russian sleep experiment.
Yes.
And this is one, Ike, help me here if I remember this right. It's where during World War II, the Russians had, I don't know if there's a specific number. I saw 5. I don't know if that's always the case, if that's a consistent number. 5 people that they used a gas to keep them awake for a prolonged period of time. And essentially turned them into a kind of a mummified zombie, this weird creature type thing. Yep. And that when they finally went in and killed them, they were kind of grateful for the release. I don't know. And again, I don't know how much of that story is consistent all the way across. And the reason this caught my eye, the reason I'm fascinated by this is because there is clearly lots of this shit that happens, right? There's lots of experimentation done by governments, particularly in war times, where they're doing these things with prisoners of war or even just citizens for that matter. I mean, it's been proven, right? They've experimented with various drugs and different things, and whatever over time. So this whole concept fascinates me, of the whole dark side of governments, and the things they do to both test things and manipulate classes and races and different things. So while who knows about this specifically, maybe this is not a truth. It is very rooted in a reality of these things that happen. There's just no denying that. I don't care what you want to think. I don't care how much you want to, wave your flags wherever you are and say we're perfect. No, it's not true. Every government has dark secrets and does these kind of things, and that's fascinating to me when this stuff's unearthed. And this was particularly creepy. And I don't know specifically, but I would assume this has been done in a movie in some make or fashion. If not, it should be, because this is just flat out written, plot line written out for a movie. Given your reaction, Ike, you had a very strong reaction. I feel that you like this one as well.
Yeah, I love the Russian sleep experiment. Obviously, the Russian sleep experiment itself is just a creepypasta. It's a story. But Dave is 100% right. The best stories are the ones that are ultimately rooted in some truth. And during World War II, even as recently as like the Cold War, and even currently, we don't even know about the extent that our own government, much less all these other governments, have done. We've learned about some of the experiments that Japan did during World War II. I mean, literally, there are some horrifying things that you can learn just by simply Googling. The Germans did experiments, the Russians did experiments, and the concept of a sleep inhibiting stimulant has often been explored, and there are some existing patents for sleep inhibiting stimulants because they're biological weapons that are also have these kind of psychological warfare perspectives. So this is a very real thing, okay?
Yeah.
The concept of not letting your enemy sleep as a method of psychological warfare has existed since the days of the Huns. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Terror and this inhibition is a very real thing that happens in our world. And again, experimentation of this nature is not unheard of. There are some really fucked up stuff that you can learn about not only our government in the United States, but other governments that they did during war times. And generally speaking, they're able to excuse those actions because it is war times. But the Russian sleep experiment is an insanely good story. It is so well written for a creepypasta post, and it has a lot of different adaptations. I don't know if it has a film adaptation. There is a few like books and things of that nature, and I'm looking at the wiki, and supposedly there is a film based on the short story called The Soviet Sleep Experiment, but I don't know. I've never seen that. I don't know. It says it has Chris Kattan in it, which, I mean,
Oh, interesting cast there.
that's what I was gonna say. Like, and it is the Chris Kattan, so I don't know. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, that's an interesting casting for that movie. But yeah, absolutely. So the Russian sleep experiment and the whole concept's so good, so creepy. Yeah, if you've never read it, I'd highly recommend you read it for sure.
Yeah, and as someone who, I value my sleep. Well, I mean, I don't need an overabundance of sleep, but I do value my rest. The thought of prolonged, staying awake or whatever you want to call it is terrifying to me. And I know when you get tired, the things it does to your mind. So, an extended, it is very creepy. And again, if it's not been adapted into a movie, I have to ask why not. That sounds perfect. Um, Absolutely perfect for a movie. And I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
Yeah.
But moving on, Ike, what is your number 2?
So my number two it's called Ben Drowned. So Ben Drowned is sort of a there's a word for it. It's called basically it's like an ongoing kind of story type thing where it's called an ARG, which is called like a augmented reality game, basically where a lot of people will create stories and they'll sort of created like they'll kind of create sort of a storyline in front of you using different types of media platforms. But in this case, it is a story of a guy who found a corrupted copy of the game Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. And in this game, you can actually you can learn songs. Like in the real game, you can learn songs on the ocarina.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the songs creates a statue of whatever form you are having. So in the game, you can wear masks. Now, when you are not wearing a mask and you're just in your human form, you can play the song and it creates a statue of yourself. And the statue is pretty creepy looking. So they use this statue, and in the sort of story is that this game is haunted by the ghost of somebody named Ben, and basically all of the characters you interact with, they have different reactions, they do things differently in the game, but it's sort of like a ghost is haunting the game. And it's really cool. It has a really cool story. Nexpo, I've talked about him before. Nexpo has a whole video on Ben Drown where he sort of does like a reenactment of the events of the story. Is really neat. But basically, it's just a story about a haunted Nintendo 64 game that takes a life of its own and has some pretty interesting impacts on the real world. And it's really creepy. Early 2000s story. It was a creepypasta, but it's fantastic. It's probably one of the better ones that I've seen, and very well fleshed out as well in terms of film, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't have much to add, but much to say about that. My number 1, probably one of the more well known of these. My number 1 is Slender Man.
Hey, mine too. Mine
Yeah.
too.
Okay, there you go. Well, I mean, obviously, it's hard not to, right? Slender Man is it's a great concept. It's classic in its approach and its design. It has been, I don't even know how many different forms it's been adapted in, right? How many different takes, movie wise. Again, there was a Supernatural episode where they touched on Slender Man. I think they called him Thin Man. But different things. It's just such a cool concept. I'm not super familiar with all the background and history of it. So Ike, I'll pass off to you since it was your number one as well, and let you flesh it out a little more. But again, Slender Man's one of those that I feel is kind of crossed over a lot more than some of them into pop culture, where a lot more people recognize that term Slender Man than some of the others. Probably again because media has really tapped into Slender Man quite a bit. So Ike, tell us a little more about Slender Man and why you chose it as number one as well.
Absolutely. So, so in my opinion, one of the, when you look at creepypastas, because again, Slender Man, it's a creepypasta. I think most of the ones we've talked about originate from creepypasta, and it just blows my mind as we talk about this. Such significant relevance of creepypasta even in today's modern horror age. But Dave's completely right. Slender Man is sort of this weird like milestone in like internet urban legend history, because here's the deal. There's movies about it, there are TV series about it, there are YouTube channels about it. Probably one of the most prolific versions of Slender Man is a series called The Marble Hornets. The Marble Hornets series is probably one of the most a super long running YouTube channel. It still exists to this day. It was inspired a la Blair Witch Project, but it's one of the better put together like reality type show things that they put on the internet, and it's fantastic. It's about Slender Man. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever watched, really. And there's so much good stuff about it. I even really like the Slender Man movie that had Joey King in it. But like Dave said, this has such significant media relevance in today's age. Not even just the different versions of it, but there was literally a murder that happened because of this. I mean,
right, yeah.
On HBO Max, or Max as it's called now, there is a documentary about this. These girls, while I believe they were mentally ill, but they genuinely believed that Slender Man was real, and they committed a murder because of Slender Man.
Yeah.
And it is mind-blowing because, when I was younger, in middle school, high school, when Slender Man was really a big thing, there was a game created about Slender Man, but there were all these stories about Slender Man being real, all these YouTube videos about Slender Man being real. And it gets to the point where there's so much of this like media that as a young person, I genuinely believe that Slender Man was a real thing. And like, it got to the point one time, I remember I had kind of like scared myself near to death. I was watching all these videos about Slender Man. I was doing research about Slender Man. You know what I mean? And realistically, Slender Man, again, ties into a very real folktale of the Pied Piper. The Pied Piper was a story where he came to town, he played his pipe, and he took kids away because the town wasn't going to cooperate with him. So the concept of the Pied Piper or Der Grobman or however you want to convolute it, it's a very real story that's just been proliferated into modern culture with Slender Man. And it's just crazy. You know what I mean? It's crazy how something on the internet can get so big and so wild that people start believing it's real. And we know that people believe it's real because people have committed crimes for Slender Man. And that in my opinion, not to say that Slender Man is successful in that fashion, but it is a very interesting footnote in our human history that an internet urban legend became so real to some people that they went that far. And I think one day we're going to look back on this as a society, and there are going to be history books and books that specifically document the significance of Slender Man, and I'm here for it. Absolutely.
It's funny you say when you were young, you believed in Slender Man and did all the research. When I was young, it was the Mikey from Life cereal commercials. It had Pop Rocks and Coke and gave himself an ulcer or blew stomach or whatever. So different times. But there you have it. There's our top 3 favorite internet urban legends. But we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to have all the news, birthdays, anniversaries, and upcoming releases that you can handle. So stick around. Make sure you subscribe to Listen to Their Screams on your favorite podcast platform. Also, make sure you look us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, TikTok, and Slasher. All you have to do is look up Listen to Screams. That is Listen, the number 2 in Screams, and you can find us there. Also, make sure you go and buy yourself a Listen to Their Screams t-shirt. You can find all of our shirts at tinyurl.com/Screams shirts.
Spreading the news. Spreading the news. Spreading the news. And we are back with the news. Yes, indeed. All right. So we're going to get started here. First of all, my voice, I can already feel it changing. I talk so much. I love talking about internet urban legend. This is probably one of my favorite things to talk about. Oh, man. It's so interesting to me. But anyways, my throat's going to start sounding weird here in a minute, but don't worry, guys. We're gonna rock and roll through this. So with our news, we have some pretty cool stuff coming out here. Chucky Season 3 is going to be split into 2 4-episode drops this year. The second half will, of course, be in 2024. This is presumed due to the current strikes, which I'm 100% here for. You know, last time I talked about how I don't like it when shows like drop episodes apart from one another. This is a good reason to do that. Any other reason, not okay. But for this reason, it's absolutely fine. It makes sense. We're here for it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I love the Chucky series. Like I said, they've been dropping all this stuff about Chucky is in the family in the White House. I'm curious to see what that has to do with. So bring it on. But yeah, I mean, that's a TV format, right? A lot of times you have that mid-season break when you talk about TV shows, so it's not that big a deal, right? That they drop some now, some later. So it's cool. It is what it is. It's obviously understanding the circumstances, but yeah, I'm just the big take is I'm glad we're getting a Chucky Season 3.
Absolutely. All right. And then we have The Nun 2 was once again number 1 in the weekend box office for September 15th through the 17th. It grossed an additional 14.5 million buckaroos. The Haunting in Venice was debuted at number 2, grossing a little over 14 million for the weekend. It's honestly amazing because The Nun 2, good movie, had a lot of fun with it. Haunting in Venice was great as well, but I'm really glad to see that 2 horror movies were in the top there. So or horror-esque movies, I should say.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we still have Saw coming out, we still have Exorcist coming out, whatever. I don't even know what else. There's these other movies still coming out. Again, guys, horror movies are the biggest sure bet in Hollywood right now. You put out a horror movie, you're almost guaranteed a number 1 opening box office. I mean, unless you're going against, Mario Brothers or Barbie or something like that. But yeah, it's great. I'm glad that that it wasn't just a thing that the Nun 2 opening weekend with hot weekend and then faded away. That it's holding at number 1.
Yep.
So.
Absolutely. This is going to be a great year. We're going to see a lot. I think we're going to see some record breaking with Five Nights at Freddy. I'm going to call it now.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see some record breaking profits for a horror movie with Five Nights at Freddy's, man. Let me tell you. Anyways, well, I'm okay. I'm just going to say one more thing. People have already started shitting on the movie because A, it's going to be rated PG-13, but B, it's going to be some of the character designs are a little bit different from the video games. And I get it. I know there are a lot of hardcore fans out there, but it needs to be a PG-13 movie because the biggest audience for this is going to be a little bit of a younger audience, which I don't think a lot of people are going to like, but I feel confident that with the people who are involved with this program, they're going to do good by it. It's going to be a good PG-13 horror movie. I'm going to say it now.
Yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's is going to be the gateway horror movie for kids. It's going to be the Goosebumps for this generation. That's going to draw kids in, or by kids I say the appropriate age. Draw those kids in, hook them on this spooky, scary stuff, and lead them into becoming horror fans for the rest of their life.
Absolutely, I love that. This is going to be this generation's Goosebumps. I think that we should be featured on a talk show now because that is probably one of the most prolific things that I have heard about that movie. All right. Anyways, before we get talking about that, because I could talk about that too for hours. Upcoming birthdays. We actually have some cool birthdays. September 21st, 1947, Stephen King, the author, And on the same day, I did not know this, Nick Castle, who played the Shape in the original Halloween 1978. Starting with Stephen King, Dave and I both love Stephen King. There's no doubt
Yep.
about that.
Yep.
I think last week we talked about him having a new book coming out, or a week or
Uh-huh.
two.
Yep. Yeah, I love Stephen King. I love his books, love his movies, or the adaptations. Still growing strong, still coming up with new stuff. Still, I mean, lots of new movies coming out based on his stuff. He's just such a cool guy, so quirky, such a good representative for the horror genre as a whole. I mean, definitely will go down as one of the greatest authors of all time. Not just horror authors, just one of the greatest authors of all time. As one of the best bodies of work as a whole of anybody.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then on the other side of that coin, we have Nick Castle, who, like we said, is
Yeah.
the original Shape from 1978 film Halloween. And it's interesting, Nick Castle. I mean, he came back and he redid his role as Michael Myers in, what was it, Halloween Kills, right?
Yeah. Nick Castle, I mean, again, a cool guy. Of course, play the Shape in the original Halloween, which is, top shelf for me. But he also directed The Last Starfighter, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. So, hey, double gold stars for Nick Castle in my book. So.
Yeah, I was just looking at his freaking IMDb, and he's got probably one of the weirdest like IMDb's that I've ever read in my life. He only has a couple of acting gigs, but he's had a good number of directing gigs.
Yeah, he's done a little bit of everything.
That's crazy. Well, hey, happy birthday, guys! And then last, but certainly least, I'm sorry,
Absolutely. Yeah.
September 26, 1970, Sherry Moon Zombie. And here's the deal. Sherry Moon Zombie is a nice person. I'm convinced of that. I'm sure that she is a kind-hearted person, as I'm convinced that Rob Zombie's probably a cool dude. But she has no business fucking acting. I'm sorry. I hate to say it, but this is the perfect example of somebody who slept with the director and got a fucking role. Now, to be fair, she's married to the director, and that's fine. But Sherry Moon Zombie was probably my least favorite part of any Rob Zombie movie that's ever been made.
Yeah, I don't like Sherry Moon Zombie either. But I know there's a lot of people who are big zombie fans of both. I like Rob Zombie as a musician. I'm not particularly fond of most of his movies. There's a little bit here and there I like. Do not like Sherry Moon Zombie though. I don't think she's a very good actress. But she is a horror fan. She is a prominent figure in the horror genre, whether we like it or not. So prominent enough to mention her birthday. And again, I wish her well. I wish no ill will just because I'm not a fan of hers. That's cool. That's fine. But whatever. Happy birthday, Sherry. Maybe just I don't know. Maybe just stay home. Don't act anymore.
I will say this: I did not hate her in The Munsters. Out of all the roles that I've seen her in, I did not hate her as in The Munsters.
Yeah.
But I know Dave definitely feels
Maybe.
differently about that.
Maybe. I don't know. I did. She was probably my least favorite part of the Munsters. But yeah. I mean, as far as she goes, maybe that was her best. But still not that great.
Oh Lord. But before we get canceled by Rob Zombie and company, upcoming movie anniversaries. September 24th, 1982, we have Amityville 2, The Possession. An ever-existing relic of why we should probably have not made sequels to some horror movies. Amityville 2 is not horrible as just a movie to put on and try and enjoy. But it's again a perfect example of why you shouldn't fucking make a sequel to any movie that comes out. You know what I mean? There are clear defined, I would say, rules for when you can and when you shouldn't, and this is when you shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, Amityville Horror is such a great movie. Amityville 2, I mean, the first was a success, caught on, so of course they were going to try a sequel, but it's not one of those things where I don't know. They didn't have the story for it, and not the greatest, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So, anyways, on to much greener pastures. September 24th, 2004, Shaun of the Dead. Honestly, that is that is a shining light in a sea of shitty movies. Shaun of the Dead is such a good movie. You know what I mean? I cannot speak how amazing Shaun of the Dead is, and not just in terms of it being a good movie, but it's supposed to be kind of a comedic take on the whole zombie genre. And in a lot of ways, I feel like this has inspired other creators to continue making, spoof movies. And spoof movies are sometimes great pieces of film, and Shaun of the Dead is by no means an exception to that.
I love Shaun of the Dead. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Simon Pegg. I love Nick Frost. I love the Cornetto trilogy. I love everything they do. And yes, this movie does, it's a comedic kind of spoof, kind of on zombie, but it does it very lovingly, very respectfully. It doesn't make fun of it. It just uses the tropes in a comedic way. It's a great movie. I love this movie. I don't even know how many times I've seen it, and it still makes me crack up every time I watch it.
Yeah, probably dozens of times. I mean, easily dozens of times that I've seen this movie. It's so good. Oh, man. Well, probably going to have to go watch the Cornetto trilogy after this. But before I do that, September 26, 1975, we have Rocky Horror Picture Show. I love Rocky Horror Picture Show. Rocky Horror Picture Show is a horror movie staple, and it is one of the few, if not the only, horror movie musicals that I know of that deserve to be recognized at least.
Yeah, perfect. It's a perfect movie. It is perfect in every way. Everything about it is spectacular. I've not been to a live show of it. I should. But I've heard nothing but spectacular things, with the live viewings and the crowd interactions. The movie's great. The soundtrack's great. You hear Time Warp and it's just stuck in your head for days. It's such a great movie.
Do the time warp again. Yeah, I love it. There's so many good songs on that. I mean, one, is just, oh man. And like you said, I think it's probably one of the more culturally relevant movies too, even to this day, even though it was made in the 70s. Like you said, there's so many showings where they people get dressed up and they have all these cool things that you do. It's just, it's a pretty incredible piece of work in my opinion.
Yep.
But all right. So we have some upcoming releases, recent and upcoming releases. So both of these are fantastic, obviously, but I'm super excited for both of them, even though I've seen one of these. But VHS 85 is coming to Shudder on October 6th, and it is described as unveiled through a made-for-TV documentary. 5 chilling tales of found footage horror emerge to take viewers on a gore-filled journey through the grim underbelly of the forgotten 1980s. Now, I love the VHS films. I love anthology films. And I am super excited for VHS 85. Yep. Now, I know Dave, he has a little bit of a hit or miss history with this, but I do specifically remember him having some excitement for specifically the 85 version.
Yeah, but found footage has never been one of my favorite. But the VHS movies have turned me around on that. It has made me soften my view on found footage movies a lot. I love the VHS movies, and this one set in 85 is just perfect for me. I cannot wait for this. I'm so excited. This will be it. I will be watching this on October 6th, the day it's released, because I've been excited. I am counting down the days. Cannot wait to watch this movie. I love the VHS movies.
Absolutely. And then, of course, if you guys want to check it out on AMC Plus or Shudder, as we just said. And then the Terrifier 2 theatrical re-release. It's coming on November 1st, and I couldn't be more excited. I'm definitely going to have to go see this in theaters. I saw the first one in theaters this year for the first time, and then obviously I'm going to go see the second one again, because why not?
Yep. Yeah, and this is moved up, right? The release date was a little later. Like mid-November, so they've moved it up, and it's pretty cool. I mean, we're talking, the day after Halloween here on, All Hallows Eve. There we go. Pretty cool. I was stoked for it anyway. Makes me even happier. It's moved in a little closer, less you have to wait. Bring it on. Everybody knows that, we love the Terrifier movies around here.
That's right. We are part of the Art the Clown fan club.
Mm-hmm.
So, All right, well, there you have it. That's all of the upcoming releases, anniversaries, birthdays, and news bits for you guys. Like I always like to say right now, make sure you follow us on social media, because if you don't, you're a loser, and I stand by that. If you follow us on social media, that means you get to see us post about all this stuff. You get to keep up to date with Dave and I, and just see some cool stuff on there, because why not? But when we come back, we are going to discuss the elevator game.
Listen to Their Screams is now a Fangoria collaborator. Get 20% off your order at shop.fangoria.com by using the promo code LISTEN2SCREAMS at checkout. That is listen, the number 2, and screams. Or you can click the link in the show notes. All right, and we are back here on Listen to Their Screams. It is review time, and we are discussing the elevator game. It was written by David N. McKendry, directed by Rebecca McKendry, starring Gino Anania, Megan Best, and Alec Carlos, among others. And it was released on September 15th on Shudder and AMC+. It is described as a supernatural horror based on the online phenomenon, a ritual conducted in an elevator in which players attempt to travel to another dimension using a set of rules that can be found online. We discussed some of these internet urban legends earlier. This is another one. This is a thing that's been adapted into a movie. Ike, tell me a little bit about the elevator game. I'm not real super familiar before this. Has this been around a while? There's this. Did they follow a set of rules pretty closely to what's been out there, or do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I am your resident internet urban legend expert, Ike Isaacs. So, Dave, he can tell you all about 80s and stuff, horror movies. I can tell you about shitty stories on the internet. So,
Potato.
That's right. So the elevator game has been around as early as like the early 2000s. We're talking like 2007, 2006, and Korea, I believe, is where it was originally from. So fun fact, foreign countries like Korea and stuff have their own social media platforms similar to things like Creepypasta, where they just post stories about things that they want to post about. So the elevator game, again, is an urban legend, originally to have originated in Korea. Basically, there are just rules circulating how to use this. So back in the day, the elevator game was a little bit more innocent, from what I can tell. It wasn't really about accessing another dimension per se. It was just supposed to be sort of like a creepy thing you do that's supposedly supposed to like be about ghosts and stuff. Now the requirements to play this game are, of course, you must be playing alone, must be in a building with at least 10 floors. So two things. The movie does stick to the 10-floor rule, but they obviously don't play alone. You also have to be able to reach all 10 floors. There cannot be any restricted, floors. Doesn't matter what time of day you play, as long as you are the only person on the elevator, and you must start over if other people get in the elevator at any point, with one exception, which there's like a bunch of rules. So basically, the rules are pretty much the same. You go in the elevator, you go to certain floors, so on and so forth. And then when you get to the 5th floor, after all of this, a woman may board the elevator. Some people say she is a stranger. Other people will say that she's supposed to resemble somebody from your past. Basically, you're not supposed to talk to this person. The woman's not human. And if you acknowledge her, she's supposed to take you to hell or whatever. And then basically you press the button to go to the 1st floor. If it descends to the 1st floor, the ritual failed and you need to leave immediately. Do not look back or talk to the person. Just exit the building. Don't look back. But if it goes up, it ascends, you'll go to the 10th floor, and this is your last chance to back out of the game. But if you do decide to continue, you'll go to the 10th floor and whatnot. And then there's different versions of this, of course, what happens when you get to the 10th floor. But basically, you can either exit the elevator or stay in the elevator, but you'll basically get out into an other world, and then, there are other rules. So if you if you exit into the other world, supposedly there's another set of rules on how you get out of the other world. So it's basically the elevator game in reverse. So it's a whole thing, right? But essentially it is an origination of Korea, where you are supposed to get an elevator, you do some shit, and then you get spooked.
Cool, cool. And again, this is I mean, these kind of things are as old as time, right?
Yes.
The games and the tricks, I mean, that you can do to summon things and to cause things or whatever, I mean, Bloody Mary, all these things. It's all at the root the same concept, right?
Yep.
Something you do that draws or causes something. This is just kind of the modern version, modern take. Again, I'll talk a little about it here as a start. Um, I just had a few notes on the movie. I really the opening was great for this movie. It was very suspenseful, very creepy. Uh, Again, with spoilers and everything, we found out this person is a later character's sister. We didn't know that at the time, but it was a very cool opening. Very set the mood, gave you the ideal right off the bat what the elevator game was, what's happening with this, and set the backbone for the movie. Now, from there, I kind of thought the early build of the movie was a bit long. Building these guys that had this internet show and everything, I thought, I don't know, it kind of drug for me a little. I thought they could have got to it a little more. I understand they were trying to establish why they were doing this, why they were trying the game, how building some some conflict within the team, whatnot. I get it. It just kind of all the suspense they got in the opening. I thought they lost it pretty quick, and it was kind of distracting. And I understand there's ups and downs, but to me that it didn't come back up quick enough. Um, I thought when they did give the twist of the intern, the girl in the opening bit being the intern's sister, thought that was kind of nice. I didn't really see that coming. I knew somehow there was more to him, right? You got that feel. There was
Yeah.
more of a reason he was there because he was pushing this elevator game. He was very enthusiastic. You knew there was something there. I didn't really put two and two together right off the bat that the opening was related, but I like that touch. I thought that made sense. Tied it together, and everything. Was a nice touch. But again, overall, I thought the story was kind of, I don't know, kind of a little weak. Some of the characters were not I don't know, they were a little for me. I like the concept of the game. I don't know if I don't know. I don't think this is my favorite approach to it per se. Um, it's okay. It works. I mean, it makes sense. It just kind of in parts fell a little flat for me, and I really wish they would have gone a little more with some of the kills and shown a little more, been a little more graphic. I'm kind of though that gore geek kind of guy. I like to see some blood guts flying about. I wish they had done a little more with that. But I understand, they're probably protecting a rating a little bit there, and there was only so much they were going to do. But for me personally, a little more would have been better. Um, and so therefore, I kind of felt like the movie was rightfully so was made for more of a little bit younger crowd than me, who was more in tune and in touch with these urban legends and these internet urban legends and these things, and who are more familiar with the story and the tales. Not because I don't appreciate the story. I'm just saying their approach to it and the way they delivered seemed a little bit more inclined for them, which is okay. That's fine. Um, the movie overall, it was okay. I like the concept. I like the urban legend and the ideal of it a lot. But I just felt like I don't know. I don't I don't have a good response, a good counter. I just maybe wish that the approach had been a little different for me. To add, I would have liked it to have been a little darker, a little more creepy, a little more sinister and scary, and not just have this. I don't know, these light, goofy parts, and then the scary parts were just, I don't know, they were a little short and thin for me. I would have liked it to kind of flip flop that a little more, had more sinister, more scary, more leaning into the woman, the fifth floor woman or whatever they called her, more into the missing sister, um, and then cut the comedic, chummy parts back a little bit. I did like how the one guy in the show was the tie-in for the sister, how he kind of used his position to, in chats to end up having sex with her and push her to play the game. I like that tie-in. That was fine. But I don't know. I just wish there had been a little more of the because when they hit some of those creepy parts, they were good. I just wish there had been more of that. More, because this, at its core, this is a very creepy, sinister, dark thing. I just wish they would have leaned onto that more than the chummy little internet show team. I just felt like there was too much of that. So, Ike, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would pretty much agree with everything you said. I do want to specifically hone in on a couple things that you said. Specifically, I agree. I think that this movie was kind of more targeted towards people who maybe were a little, like you said, maybe have a little more experience with the whole concept of the internet urban legend. I completely forgot to mention it with the history that I was kind of given about the whole thing, just kind of how it's played. But the death of Elisa Lam at the hotel that was kind of famous not too long ago, where she was found in the water tank.
Yeah.
It's speculated based on the footage that she was actually playing the elevator game. So some people claim, obviously, unjustly, that she was somehow killed because of that. But that's a whole nother thing altogether. Anyways, but just kind of specifically hone in on some things you said. I agree. This is definitely more geared towards people who have a little more potential, like maybe knowledge of like internet urban legends. Because like you said, we kind of talked a lot about how internet urban legends are sort of this really cool phenomenon more recently, where you have the internet, you have these people telling stories, and then they get proliferated into pop culture. So the whole concept of the elevator game, it's not new. It's been around for a little while, but it's like the movie definitely tried to capitalize on sort of that notoriety of the whole concept. I agree that they took way too long to establish any kind of basis for anything. I felt like a lot of it was dragging, and I felt like by the time that you actually got to the point where people were getting killed or dying, there was little to no payout.
Yeah.
I felt like the payout of the lead up was not significant enough to actually mean anything. I felt like, you're watching this movie, it has all this exposition, and then you get to the point where it's like, okay, here's the climax. It didn't feel like it was enough. There were some cool kills, there was some blood, but I felt like for how they were depicting how these people were supposed to be dying because of the fifth floor woman, I did not feel like it was proportionate to what they were showing. They're talking about the fifth floor woman supposed to like just eviscerate you because she was eviscerated in the elevator. So I didn't feel like that was happening. I felt like, they got bonked on the head and disappeared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, and I did like that, though. I did like the fact that basically if the fifth floor woman killed you, the person disappeared. The body disappeared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was watching the movie with my wife, and she was like, I guess the fifth floor woman cleans up after herself, which is true. I mean,
nice of her.
And I guess that's right. That's so thoughtful.
Such a polite thing.
That's right. Such a polite ghost, such a polite demonic entity, and it's true though. I mean, but I will say this: it makes more sense that she cleans up after herself because these people are declared missing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do like that. I think that was actually pretty cool on their part that, like, yeah, she cleans up after herself or makes it not exist anymore because she wants more people to come die. But like you said, there was a very cool plot twist with the intern from the beginning that kind of joins the web show. There was a really cool plot twist with him being the brother of the first girl that we see get, killed by the fifth floor woman. And the fifth floor woman was pretty creepy. You know what I mean? That's another thing. I thought her design was interesting. It was scary, made sense. They eventually got into sort of, why the fifth floor woman does what the fifth floor woman does.
Yep.
And, it makes sense, you know what I mean, to an extent. Like you said, I really wish that they would have maybe done a little bit more with, like, the Red World. Maybe given some backstory to that, because that part didn't really make sense to me. Because basically we're assuming that this girl who died just created this whole dimension because she died. So I would like to see a little bit more of an explanation to that, because I think it'd be really cool if the Red World had other entities in it, and just the fifth floor woman happens to exist in the Red World with these other entities, because I feel like that could open it up and you could have other movies about the Red World and stuff like that. But basically I felt like we were left with a little bit of a little bit of some answered questions. You know what I mean? What is the Red World? Is there
Yeah.
anything else to it? But excuse me. Overall, I didn't hate the movie. It was very entertaining. I just wish that maybe there was a little bit more capitalization on the build up. You know, maybe a little bit more of a punch, if you will. You know, I want that. Just I want to see limbs ripped off. I want to see heads exploding. You
Yeah.
know, and I just didn't get that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way I felt. It felt very flat. The concept was great, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and they did a good job. They did a good job explaining it for people who don't understand, right? But people can, like I said, people can relate because these urban legends are not new. It doesn't matter the means they're delivered. The concept people get, folk tales, urban legends, blah blah blah. These games, people get that. So they established in that opening pretty, people understood what it was. Um, I agree. The Red World seemed odd. It seemed unnecessary in the way
Yeah.
they told the story. Now, with a few tweaks, they could have established, this Red World. They could have spun off other urban legend movies, other internet urban legend movies based in this Red World's kind of the central unit of this all, right? Everything stems from this. If they could have just tweaked it a little, if that's what they wanted to do. If not, I kind of feel like the Red World was unnecessary in this movie. I kind of wish the kid that lured, that was kind of a jerk and lured the girl to play the game at the beginning. I kind of wish they had saved his death for a little more towards the end. And
Yeah.
even if you did shorter kills with the others like they did, made his a little more elaborate because this guy is kind of the root at the missing sister. And I felt like maybe they could have, his at least should have been a little more spectacular, a little more building. But I felt like it needed that a little more overall. Again, the opening was really suspenseful, very creepy, set the stage right, and then from there it just kind of, I don't know, it kind of fell flat. I don't feel like that I'm the target audience for this. That's okay. But I feel like with a few tweaks, I still could have appreciated it a little more than I did. Um, the concept was there, the idea was there. I felt like the delivery missed on a couple spots. Again, I love the concept of the elevator game. A lot. I
Right.
would like to see. I would like to see somebody, for lack of a better phrase, somebody with a little more vision to deliver a movie on this because I think there's so much more that can be told with this. Um, I in effort for trying, I just don't think this did it for me right in the right way to do it. It had had some parts, but overall, I get it. It's relatable. Um, with the internet show thing, I get it. But again, they just dwelled. I know they were trying to establish that they needed to produce something quick, and that's to not lose a sponsor. So that's why they were doing this because they didn't want to. I don't know. I felt like I felt like they spent too much time with the argument back and forth of why they should do it. I think they could have just literally been like, nobody's got ideas. Nobody's got ideals. This kid pitches an ideal, and the guy in charge could have been like, okay, no one's got an ideal. Okay, well, I guess we're doing this then because that's all we've got. Let's just do it. And I didn't feel like there needed to be more than that. Just one guy was in charge, right? And he should have just said, hey, we need content. We got to put out an episode. We got to meet we got to do this for the sponsors. So if no one's got a better ideal, the elevator game it is, I guess, and go with it. But they drug it out a little bit for me, and I thought it was a little much. But
Yeah.
I don't think that was the part to hone in on the movie. I just don't feel like it developed any of the characters enough. I don't know. It missed on me. But it wasn't a horrible movie. Not my cup of tea. The concept was, the delivery wasn't in my eyes. But I do see where I think there'll be a lot of people who will enjoy this movie. Uh, and I can see this being, again, a gateway movie for some younger people or some non-horror watching movie people. Maybe a gateway that can pull a few in, right? Some people that like the urban legends and the internet urban legends and the creepypastas and et cetera, et cetera. but don't watch a lot of horror movies per se, and they see this and think, oh, that wasn't bad. I'm going to watch some more and watch some more. And then as you watch more, you broaden. I could see it being a gateway for a few people, and I hope so. But for someone, I don't know, to me, for someone who watches a lot of horror, I don't know, it lacks for that kind of person. I feel like it's more for a newer viewer in the genre, or someone who just, is super, super in touch and into this stuff.
Right.
But again, I still feel like even at that, because again, I love the concept. I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like there could have been a better take on it, but whatever, you gotta try some way. And,
That's right.
and it wasn't that it was illogical, because it made sense the way they tried. I just felt like they dwelled on the wrong parts too much. And we understood what the concept was. We understood, hey, this is an internet show. They cover these things. They needed to do a show. They were going to lose sponsors. They were getting ready to lose their dreams. So they had to do this. Okay, we got that. Go on, do the thing. And I just felt like they dwelled on the wrong part a little too long, and they should have dwelled more on the game itself and that part
Yeah.
of it. And
It all kind of, in my opinion, it all kind of just circles back to I felt like there was too much exposition for what they were trying to go for.
yeah,
And I think that had they cut a little bit of that, maybe taken it a little easy on some of that, like you said, like, oh yeah, we're, this whole YouTube thing and we're going to make these things. We don't have any ideas. Let's kind of talk about it. And then, okay, let's just do the elevator game. It just kind of felt like, if they had just kind of thrust you into it, you know what I mean? Just kind of thrown you in, yeah, probably would have been better. You know what I mean? I think I would have been
yeah,
more happy with a little less explanation as to why they're talking about the game. And like you said, a little bit more description about what the game is, why the game exists, and everything else. I just felt like it was just a little long-winded for what they were trying to do.
yeah. I agree. It just felt like they got a little bogged down with the wrong point. I feel like that's just a kind of a writing error there, that maybe, or an editing error, that someone could have looked at this and said, you know what, we're kind of repeating ourselves a lot here, treading some water. Let's cut some of this and let's put a little more meat in the horror part and the scary part. And because that's what
Yeah.
people, no matter how you come to this, no matter your interest in this, that's what you want to see. Whether it's from just a purely horror standpoint, whether it's from the internet urban legend, whether this one specifically, whatever avenue you're coming to watch this specifically, that's
Yeah.
what you want to see, is the delivery of the tale itself. So I don't know if they were trying to do it for the sake of character development. It didn't really develop the characters any more than what they already were. We knew what was what, and I don't know. I felt like they missed a little bit on that. So let's rate this thing. I'll go first. Again, not a horrible movie, not one that I would probably go back to rewatch. Um, to me, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5 screams, because I think, again, it's just a little less than that middle of the road enjoyable for me. Again, a little formatting, a little writing differences, a little tweaks here and there, and it's easily a 3. Um, if you tweak it enough, it could have even got up maybe to a 3.5 for me, because the concept was good. But because of, I don't know, too much salad, not enough steak. Um, I think it drops it to a 2.5 for me.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, I feel like there definitely could have been some potential tweaks to the whole thing. And I definitely feel like this would have been a much more enjoyable movie overall. But, there's only so much that we can do as podcast creators. So I think I'll have to agree. 2.5 out of 5. I feel like that's a fair description of what we got. And like I said, it wasn't even necessarily that I didn't like the movie. It was just, there are better things that could have been done. There are better
Yeah.
things that could have been done with the content, and I think hopefully with the success that this might have had, we might see some stuff more in line with it in the future. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I definitely wish someone, like I said, someone would do a different take on this, because I love the concept of it. So I definitely would, since this one's been out, that may not happen for a bit. I don't know. But I definitely wish someone would try a different pass at the concept
Yeah.
of the elevator game, because I do like the concept. I just don't like necessarily their approach to it. And then I don't, again, like we said, we explained it. I just don't like how they delivered.
Yep.
But it's okay as a film. It was made well. It wasn't any issues with that. The filmmaking per se. I feel like it was some of the writing, and just editing choices that were wrong.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
but still go give it especially if you're into these things. And if you're a younger, I'm sure this thing is. I don't want to sound like an old man, but I'm sure this thing will be a hit with the high schoolers. The high school age kids. The things. I feel like this is more in their wheelhouse and not in mine.
This will be a hit with the kids.
That's right. All those youngsters. So, but it is what it is. So go check out the elevator game for yourself. It's available on Shudder, Amazon Plus, or AMC Plus, not Amazon Plus, AMC Plus, Shudder. So go give it a watch. But this is what everybody likes. Next week, we have another one of our infamous franchise episodes. And this time, we are going to discuss the Saw franchise in preparation for the upcoming release of Saw 10, Saw X. We're going to discuss the existing Saw movies, rank them in order of our favorites, our choices, and discuss each one a little bit. We're trimming away all the fat, trimming away all the bells and whistles that we usually have on here, and just getting to the heart, discussing the franchise. And this is we both really, really like the Saw franchise, so this will be fun. And this will be I know one Ike that you've really been looking forward to diving into.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm very excited. I'm very excited. I'm already formulating my rankings as we speak.
All right. Well, we will have all that next episode again as we prepare. We're just right around the corner from the release of the new Saw movie, so we'll prep you by discussing all the existing content that is out there in the Saw universe. But before we get out of here, make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Share all of our posts, share all of our episodes, give us a rating and review if that is applicable. Follow us on social media, as we've mentioned a few times. We're on. Well, what are we all on? We're on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Slasher, Twitter X, whatever it's called. We're on all those. Just like listen to Screams, listen the number 2 Screams. Follow us there. We post lots of things that we discuss in the episodes, some things that we don't. Lots of cool stuff on there. So go follow us on those platforms, interact with us, join the discussion, and talk this stuff with us. So, Ike, before we close out and get out of here and move on to the world of Jigsaw and Saw, anything you want to say?
Only thing I want to say is I want to play a game.
Absolutely, I'm ready. Not the elevator game. Not that we've played that one. We're on to a different game, and I'm looking forward to it. It is going to be fun. But until that, which is next episode, wherever you go and whatever you do, be good, be safe, and have many pleasant nightmares.